see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do. They're really saying I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do. They're really saying I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how they do. They're really saying I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how they do. They're really saying I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how we
afternoon, everyone. We're here today to celebrate the life of a much-loved man, Tommy Gemmell. Tommy's death will leave a gap impossible to contemplate in the lives of those who knew and loved him. We mark the ending of his time with you with respect, with sadness, and above all with love and gratitude for all that he's given to each of you and the wider community. It was Tommy's wish to have a non-religious ceremony, so I'm here from the charity Humanist Society Scotland to conduct this celebration of Tommy's life with the people he loved and who loved and respected him. For those of you who might wonder what humanism is, humanists believe that morality is part of human nature, based simply on common sense, kindness and consideration towards others, very much the way Tommy lived his own life. He had so many positive qualities that have left a deep and lasting impression on those closest to him and those lucky enough to have known him. Today's ceremony is exclusively dedicated to Tommy, but it's also an inclusive occasion. I owe thanks to the people who have contributed their memory of times spent with Tommy and hope that this will remind you of the full life he led and the abiding and indelible mark he's made on everyone here. Tommy was very clear what was to be said, as I'm sure you'll guess. He chose the music too, so I'm here to remind you, as if you need reminding, about him, to talk about his life along with Jim, Nicky and Alec. And maybe there'll be one or two things you didn't know about Tommy. Later on in the ceremony, there'll be time for private reflection when you can pay your respects to Tommy in a way that fits with your own beliefs. The way to keep Tommy in your hearts, in your minds, and in your actions is to celebrate his life and be glad that you knew him. The following words seem to me to describe Tommy well. A man is a success who has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who has gained the respect of intelligent men and women and the love of children, who has filled his niche and accomplished his tasks, who leaves the world better than he found it, who's never lacked appreciation of earth's beauty or failed to express it, who looked for the best in others and gave the very best he had. That was by Robert Louis Stevenson. Now I'm going to invite our first speaker, Jim Craig, to tell us about the Tommy that he knew. Jim, can I ask you to come up?
I first met Tommy Gemmell, Tam, or TG to the boys that played together, January 1965. 2 months later, Jockstein arrived, and everything changed. Tam once told me that shortly before then, he had been warned by one of the previous management team that if he crossed that halfway line once more, he was out the team the next week. Under Jockstein, fullbacks could now be liberated and even emancipated, and we could take part in attacking moves, although, as Jockstein pointed out to us on more than one occasion, we were defenders first and attackers second. Although I was obviously another fullback and therefore a possible future rival, Tom could not be more helpful. When I made the first team later that year, he was even more considerate, as my nerves must have been showing, and he made me feel much more comfortable as we waited to go down the tunnel for a match. Soon, whenever we went to Gemmell for a few days or travelled abroad, we were paired up together as roommates. However, this could have its problems. Tam had many good qualities, but he also could have his little idiosyncrasies as well. One of these was his ability to disappear, or more correctly, his inability to be where he was supposed to be at a given time. It had been made quite clear to me by the boss that he expected me to keep an eye on Tam and make sure he was there when he was supposed to be there. I never thought much about this request, or perhaps command would be a better word, until certain situations developed. On one foreign trip, for instance, we would leave our room at the same time to come down for breakfast. 10 minutes later, though, the boss would be asking me, "Kearney, where is he?" And I was thinking to myself that we had left the room at the same time, we'd come down in the lift at the same time, and I saw him in the foyer as well. Since then, I don't know. The boss would also ask me the same question. We were all seated in the bus ready to go to training. Nearly Mocken would do a head count, find out we were one short, tell the boss it was Tam, and the boss would shout out my name and ask where he is. Unfortunately, these questions from the man in charge, asked in a decided tone of asperity, were ones that I could not answer with any degree of accuracy. Over the years, Tam could be accused of being noisy, argumentative, flamboyant. He had the flashy suits and the car with a Colonel Bogey horn, and even cocky, but he also delivered. His scoring record, an excellent one for a fullback, and his ability to drive home a penalty, a great bonus. Probably his most famous goal was the equaliser in the European Cup final in Lisbon. Although with great modesty might I point out that he received such a perfect pass along the 18-yard line that his granny could have knocked that one in. You know? In the dressing room, Tam was a popular guy, easy to get on with. His natural confidence greatly helped to create a positive atmosphere, and whatever he took part in, he gave it 100%. The last few years of his life have been tough. That once powerful frame began to weaken, and Tam was eventually confined to his bed, a situation such a strong athlete must have found really difficult to cope with. Yet, as his strength waned, I never once heard him complain, and frankly, the way he dealt with whatever came his way was a lesson to us all. Eventually, on the 2nd of March, he succumbed to his illness and passed away in the early hours of the morning. Our thoughts at this time must be with his wife Mary, children Karen and David, plus his extended family. These will be difficult times for them, but I am sure that they will be comforted by the fact that, as we saw this morning on our way here from Parkhead, their man was highly regarded and respected by the Celtic support. In the years since Celtic Football Club was founded in 1887, there have been many fine fullbacks who have worn the hoops with distinction. But undoubtedly, the name of Tommy Gemmell would be right up there with the best of them. May he now rest in peace.
Thank you, Jim. Now, Nikki Regan is going to read a poem for Tommy. Nikki.
We will hear today about Tommy Gemmell the legend. This is for Tommy Gemmell the man. We remember him. When we are weary and need of strength, when we are lost and sick of heart, we remember him. When we have a joy we crave to share, when we have decisions that are difficult to make, when we have achievements that are based on his, we remember him. At the blowing of the wind and the chill of the winter, at the opening of the buds and the rebirth of spring, we remember him. At the blueness of the sky and the warmth of the summer, at the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember him. At the rising of the sun and at its setting, we remember him. As long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us, and we remember him.
Thank you, Nikki. Alec Gordon has some words to say about his friend and colleague, Tommy. Alec.
Good afternoon, people, friends of Tommy Gemmell. I'm not much of a speechifier, as I'm about to demonstrate, so bear with me, please. Mary has asked me to say a few words about her husband Tommy, and she has made me promise to trim it to under an hour. I'll do my best. Okay, where to start when you're talking about a genuine Celtic legend, a unique footballer and human being who made the beautiful game even more attractive by his awesome presence? Well-deserved tributes have been paid over the past 8 days to a man who will be remembered for all time in Celtic folklore. Tommy Gemmell touched the hearts of so many, and he gave us all an avalanche of outstanding memories to treasure and cherish. Only a few weeks ago, at his bedside, in the Glasgow care facility that had become home for almost 3 months, I asked him what it was like to make so many people smile. How did it feel knowing his goal in Lisbon would still be being replayed in 100 years' time and another 100 years after that? I'm happy if I made other people happy, he said, without a trace of mock modesty. And he added, mind you, I enjoyed it too. Life was never dull around Tommy Gemmell. He was a generous, big-hearted personality who was one of the most humble guys I have ever had the honour to meet and call a friend. He was an ordinary bloke who did extraordinary things. Tommy Gemmell is the only British player to score in 2 European Cup finals and a World Club Championship final. That feat will never be equalled. I was still at school when I first clapped eyes on this remarkable character in 1963. I've been a Celtic supporter as far back as I can remember, and I used to attend all the games in the old jungle at Celtic Park with my dad and my 2 uncles. The first left-back I can remember at Celtic was a sturdy, no-nonsense fellow by the name of Jim Kennedy. He was a proper fullback with his shorts pulled up to his armpits, concrete reinforced shin pads and boots that must have weighed 4 stone each. It didn't matter that he was as mobile as Frankenstein's monster, because he rarely ventured into the other team's half. He was a defender, and he was there to defend. I recall his main strength was his ability to lob the opposing outside right about 50 yards with devastating accuracy. In Jim Kennedy's own words, I was purely defender and tended to get a nosebleed if I went over the halfway line. And then in came this young whippersnapper by the name of Tommy Gemmell. He was 19 years old and didn't look like any fullback I had ever seen. No sign of bulky shin pads, no boots made in John Brown's shipyard. He was blonde, tall, lithe and stylish, and he could run like an Olympic athlete. Bewilderingly, he would spend a fair percentage of the game in enemy territory, and he possessed the kick like an angry mule as he routinely terrified opposing goalkeepers. He was a swashbuckling character who performed with a swagger. Tommy Gemmell was here to stay. For me, it was adoration at first sight. Of course, what I and thousands of other Celtic fans didn't realise at the time was the fact Tommy was going against strict orders from Sean Fallon, who was Jimmy McGrory's assistant manager, who threatened to drop him if he continued to cross the halfway line. Tommy, being Tommy, chose to ignore those instructions, and we can all be eternally grateful for that. If he had listened to the assistant manager, Celtic Football Club might not have a certain celebration to look forward to on May 25. Tommy Gemmell scored 63 goals for Celtic, even including 31 penalty kicks. That is a stupendous record for a fullback. We should make no mistake, Tommy revolutionised that position, and he took it on that task on his own. Jock Stein, of course, became Celtic manager in March 1965, and as we all recognised, he encouraged attacking football. That suited Tommy Gemmell, but it must be noted that Big Jock, bear with me please, Big Jock told him his main role in the team was to defend, and heaven help him if he was marked absent when crosses were allowed to come into the Celtic box. But there was just no way you could curb the adventurous spirit or the eye-catching antics of this amazing footballer. Tommy Gemmell was a cavalier in green and white hoops as he relentlessly hurtled up down the right and left wings. Soon opponents were putting out wingers to man-mark the Celtic fullback. Incredible. So we know all about the goals, the gongs and the glory of Tommy Gemmell's remarkable career at club and country level. But what about the man? I could never have dreamed how things would pan out for Tommy Gemmell and that wee boy in the jungle. Truly, as they say, you couldn't make it up. Fact is often stranger than fiction. I first interviewed Tommy in 1969 for a football magazine when I was 17 and working as a sports sub-editor on the Daily Record newspaper. To me and many others, he wasn't just the best left-back at Celtic or in Scotland, he was the best left-back in the world. If Tommy had been born in Rio de Janeiro and not Craig Nuke, he would have been a global sensation. I recall that interview vividly. I was a nervous wreck when I dialed his phone number. Hello, said the voice at the other end. Hello, I responded. I managed to blurt out, I'm looking for Mr. Gemmell. You've found him, came the friendly reply, and my name's Tommy. What can I do for you? I explained who I was and what I was looking for an interview for a football magazine. I asked, may I steal 5 minutes of your time? There was a laugh at the other end of the line. No, you may not steal 5 minutes of my time. Take as long as you want, son. That conversation lasted 48 years on and off. Tommy Gemmell transformed from hero to friend in a heartbeat that day. He put a rookie interviewer at ease, and I never forgot that simple act of kindness. He was always there when I needed him. Nothing was too much bother for this guy. Eventually we met in person and we kept the friendship going. This generous man, and I use the word generous in all its many aspects, gave up his time to spend hours being interviewed by me and the sports reporters of various other newspapers and magazines. We all knew he was an intelligent, witty character, and the stories just about wrote themselves. Tommy Gemmell never asked for a penny for his time. There were other individuals in the sport without a scintilla of Tommy Gemmell's ability, whose first question would be, if you asked him for an interview, how much? There was a well-known character who is known to the press as FIFA, and I'm not talking about the world's governing football body. You spoke to this guy and it was a case of a fee for this and a fee for that. That was not Tommy Gemmell's style. As a human being, Tommy insisted there were two classes, first and none. Guess which category fitted Tommy? Tommy Gemmell, of course, played his football as he lived his life, with a smile on his face, and he lived life to the full, believe me. I left the Sunday Mail, where I had been sports editor in 1994, and acquired a sports news agency called 7 Day Press. I moved the company to West Nile Street in Glasgow city centre. Around the same time, the financial advisors where Tommy worked shifted across the city to West Nile Street. Suddenly, my big pal and I were neighbours. The Iron Horse pub was directly opposite my office and a short free kick from Telmy's. Needless to say, it became headquarters. 2 or 3 times a week, I would receive a phone call from Tommy, HQ, 5 minutes. Who could turn down that request? This went on for the best part of 20 years. Just an hour or so in each other's company, a lot of time on our own, well, as much as you can be on your own in a pub in the heart of Glasgow. Tommy Gemmell was, of course, still an instantly recognisable figure. I want to meet the genius who invented the mobile camera phones. I've taken more snaps than David Bailey and Lord Lichfield combined. Complete strangers would burst into your company. It didn't matter that we were having a private conversation. I embraced Tommy like a long-lost brother. And Tommy always had time for these fans. They would hand me their phone and order me to take a picture. Tommy would pose with his new best friend and have a natter before another satisfied punter left, looking at his phone and a memento that would no doubt be kept forever. Again, that was so typical of the man. He loved Celtic Football Club, but equally he loved Celtic fans. 11 months ago, on April 8th to be precise, Tommy made his last appearance at a supporters function. Ironically, it was the Dunblane Tommy Gemmell Celtic Supporters Club, and they were celebrating their 20th anniversary at Stirling Rugby Club. In truth, he wasn't in the greatest of health. He could quite easily have politely declined the invitation. However, he made up his mind he was going to make an effort and go to the function. I don't want to let anyone down, he said. My wife Gerda and I drove to Dunblane to pick him up that Friday night. He didn't look well at all, but he was absolutely determined he would attend that function. There was no change in his mind. Tommy saw it most of that evening before we drove him home again. We took him to his ground floor flat. Normally he would ask us in for what he termed a snifter, but on this evening he turned and said, "Do you mind if I go straight to bed? I'm a wee bit tired." He looked shattered, out on his feet, but there was no way Tommy Gemmell was going to let down the people he always insisted were the greatest fans in the world. In our days in the Iron Horse pub, Tommy's tipple was dry white wine, but he always finished with a brandy and port. Somewhere along the line we would have blotting paper, Tommy's euphemism for food. But when we were winding down to go back to our respective workplaces, he would order up a brandy and port, gentleman's measure, please. For the uninitiated in the ways of pub culture, a gentleman's measure is a double. However, I have this feeling if Tommy had still been around in May, he might have fancied a treble. Even heroes have heroes, and Tommy's favourite sportsman of all time was Muhammad Ali. for many people rightly proclaimed the greatest. Muhammad Ali was the world heavyweight boxing champion by the time he visited Scotland in August 1965. It was arranged for Ali to visit Celtic Park and then Ibrox, and of course the press was out in force. Ali posed for all sorts of pictures, even hammed it up in a kilt, and Tommy was like a kid when I talked to him years later about meeting his hero. Tommy told me he was an awesome presence. You saw him on the telly, but you never really appreciated the size of the guy or his fabulous physique. The dimensions of his hands were like sides of ham, and of course he was such an immaculately honed sportsman with incredible good looks. Apart from that, he was just an ordinary fellow. As Ali prepared to leave Celtic Park to go and meet the Rangers players, Tommy told him to look out for Willie Henderson, the club's fabulous wee outside right, who also became a lifelong friend of Tommy. Willie Henderson is a boxing aficionado. Tommy, in fact, made the point Willie actually looked like a boxer on account of his squash nose. Anyway, Muhammad Ali and his entourage arrived in Govan and went through the same routines with the Rangers players, posing for photographs and so on. Willie, as expected, took the opportunity to introduce himself to the world's greatest ever fighter. They shook hands and Ali looked at Willie's nose. "You a footballer?" he asked. "Aye," answered Willie. Ali took another glance at the Rangers player's flattened hooter. "Man, I'm glad I'm a boxer," he said. Of course, Muhammad Ali passed away in June last year at the age of 74, a year older than Tommy. Can you imagine the chat these two guys could be having today as they discuss their sporting achievements? The affection in which Tommy Gemmell held Willie Henderson is obvious today. Willie, who doesn't drive, made frequent visits to his big pal in Dunblane and latterly Glasgow. I love the story Tommy told me about Willie turning on a Rangers teammate when they were at a footballing function. He was chatting to Tommy when an Ibrox colleague said, "What are you talking to him for? He does nothing but kick you when you're out in the football park." Willie bristled. "He's never kicked me in his life. Tripped me up, tugged my jersey and pulled me down, but he's never kicked me." Speaking of wonderful wee touchline magicians, we couldn't possibly miss a mention of Jimmy Johnson. Tommy Gemmell loved his fellow Lisbon Lions and what they achieved for Celtic in particular and world football in general. He could spend hours extolling the virtues of Rory Simpson, Jim Craig, Bobby Murdoch, Billy McNeil, John Clark, Willie Wallace, Stevie Chalmers, Bertie Auld and Bobby Lennox. It must be said he was also a big fan of Davy Hay. But there is no doubt that wee Jinky Johnson had a special place in the heart of Tommy Gemmell. They were football's odd couple, with Tommy standing at 6'2" and Jinky at just 5'4". They first met even before they joined Celtic, as they both attended Burnbank Technical College in Lanarkshire. Tommy had thoughts of becoming an electrician, and Jinky was training to become a welder. Thankfully, their career paths took a dramatically different course. Tommy and Jinky both signed for Celtic in the winter of 1961 and became the best of buddies throughout their lives. Tommy had a host of tales about Jinky, who, of course, was voted the greatest ever Celtic player by the supporters. We all knew what he got up to on the field, but his off-the-field antics were just as entertaining. Tommy told me the story of Jinky turning up at Celtic Park one day with a brand new Jaguar car. The wee man was his proudest bunch. "Tam, come and have a smell at these seats. They're real leather. That's no rubber. Classy wheels, eh? A cigar lighter too," and so on. Tommy agreed to let Jinky pick him up after training the following day, and they would head up for Crieff for a relaxing spot of fishing. They were heading to one of Tommy's favourite spots, and he was giving his wee mate directions. At one point, they came to a roundabout. "Which way, Tam?" asked Jinky. "Straight through, wee man," answered Tommy. And with that, Jinky drove up onto the roundabout, through the flower beds, through all sorts of plants and down the other side. "What the hell was that?" screamed Tommy. "Well, you said straight through," answered Jinky. Tommy Gemmell will always be remembered as the guy who sent West German midfielder Helmut Haller into orbit when Scotland were playing a World Cup qualifier in Hamburg in 1969. The Scots were losing 3-2 in a crucial game that would go a long way to determining their hopes of playing in Mexico the following year. With a minute to go, Tommy was charging through into his favourite position, about 25 yards out, and lining up a shot with his mighty right boot. Haller snaked out a right foot and blatantly tripped Tommy. Tommy went down in a heap and was furious when the Swiss referee didn't award a free kick. His mood didn't get any better when he saw Haller laughing. The red mist came down and Tommy chased the West German and attempted to put him over the stand. Helmut Haller died in October 2012. I telephoned Tommy to get his reaction. Quick as a flash, he said, "I hope they're not going to blame me." I won't dwell on Tommy Gemmell's latter years. My wife and I travelled through to Dunblane to go for lunch once a week for almost 6 years. It was always a pleasure to spend time with this bloke's company. We spoke on the phone virtually every day. Of course, the chat always got round to Celtic. Tommy wasn't able to get to as many games at Celtic Park as he would have liked, but he still retained a special interest in the club, of course. He would see the action on TV and read the reports. He always paid particular attention to the left-backs over the years. He rated the players who went that extra mile and realised that attack was the best form of defence. Danny McGrain he liked, but preferred at right-back. Tommy also liked Andy Lynch, who, of course, had started his career as an outside left with Hearts. He enjoyed the exciting forays of Emilio Ezagiri, and I can tell you he had the highest regard for Kieran Tierney. Genuinely, he spoke in glowing terms about the young man, and I suppose if anyone could spot a left-back, it would be Tommy Gemmell. In the past 6 months or so, Tommy's health was faltering. He was becoming increasingly frail, but I never once heard him moan about the situation. One of his favourite sayings was, "Why should a living man ever complain?" I didn't think there was anything left for Tommy Gemmell to do to prove he was such an inspiration. I was in awe of the courage, strength and character of the man. One of his favourite actors was John Wayne. Even Hollywood, at its most far-fetched, could never have captured the spirit and fortitude of Tommy Gemmell, as he spent virtually the last 3 months of his incredible life bedbound. On December 7 last year, Tommy moved from Dunblane to the Three Bridges care facility in the south side of Glasgow, ironically not far from Hampden Park. He had fought and overcome so many obstacles as a footballer and a man. But this was one fight even the great Tommy Gemmell could not win. Last Thursday morning, around 1:30, Tommy passed away. His wife Mary, who had been at his bedside for practically an entire week, phoned me a few minutes later. "Tommy's gone," she said. "Those were the words we dreaded but realised were inevitable. You may believe you are well prepared for news like this, but the words still hit you with the force of a wrecking ball. At that moment, the world lost a good man, Celtic lost a favourite son, football lost a legend, and my wife Gerda and I lost an exceptional friend. More importantly, Mary lost a wonderful husband she called the love of my life." Tommy Gemmell, after a decade of unparalleled success at Parkhead, was transferred to Nottingham Forest in December 1971. He was 28, and of course he didn't want to leave Celtic. It was only a matter of time before he returned to paradise, and he managed that this morning. Rest in peace, old chum.
Thank you, Alec. Now, as I'm sure you'll understand, I didn't have the pleasure of knowing Tommy myself, but I spent some time the other day with Mary and Tommy's sister, Moira. They had so many happy memories, far too many for us to share here today, but I'm hoping you'll go on celebrating Tommy's life for a while longer and share your own stories of this much-loved man. But for now, let me take you back to when Tommy was born on the 16th of October 1943, to his parents, Margaret and Alf, their first child, followed by Moira, David and Anna. They lived in Bells Hill when Tommy was born, then moved in with Margaret's mum, who stayed in Motherwell. Margaret, Alf, Tommy and Moira had the front room, and Margaret's sister Anna, with her husband Frank and their 2 children, stayed in the back room. It was a tight squeeze, but not unusual for those times. It was to be another 4 years before the family got their own home, a prefab in Craigneuk, where Tommy started primary school. He was a clever boy, very good at most subjects, but the ones that he really enjoyed were geography and maths. Tommy was a Ducks medalist and sports champion 2 years in a row. For being Ducks, Margaret and Alf bought him a bike. That bike became the love of his life. He dried it off after being out in the rain, took the pedals off so his siblings couldn't get a shot of it when he wasn't there. And when he became a paper boy, he was still using the same bike, even though his knees were hitting the handlebars. Tommy was competitive from an early age. Moira had a story to illustrate that. When he was just 7 years old, the two of them were playing tig. Moira being the youngest by just 15 months, Tommy couldn't catch her. She was a faster runner in those days. So what did he do? He tripped her up. Moira remembers tea time in the Gemmell household. They'd all be waiting to see what it was. Sirloin steak for Tommy, sausages, egg and beans for the rest of them, apart from Alf, who got steamed fish. Margaret made 3 different meals every night. Just as well she didn't have a job outside the home. She was always there for them coming in from school. Following on from Craigneuk Public School, Tommy went to Wishaw High, where it was apparent that he could have gone on to higher education, but by this time, football had a stronger hold than learning. So he left school and became an apprentice electrician. Tommy's parents wanted him to have something he could fall back on if the football didn't work out. He'd finish his shift, get on the bus to go to Parkhead and fall asleep, ending up at Glasgow Cross. Tommy didn't have the money to get back, so he ran all the way from there to Celtic Park. I don't need to tell you any more about Tommy's career as a footballer. You all know far more than me. Tommy would always remind Mary when the opportunity came up that he was an electrician, which wasn't strictly true as he didn't finish his apprenticeship by that time. He'd signed with Celtic. But do you know what Tommy's claim to fame was? Not what we'd expect, but that he'd rewired Sydney Devine's home. And even better, Sydney said, "Tommy, you did a great job." Tommy's mum and dad were plain speakers, said it like it was. And Margaret used to cuff Tommy's lug when he was late coming home from school. That would be because he was playing footy with his pals. Alf, Tommy's dad, had integrity. He taught by example, set down the ground rules, earned the respect of his son and others. Early on in his career, Tommy met and married Anne. They had 2 children, Karen and David. When their marriage ended, Tommy immersed himself in his work running a hotel in Errol. He was never work shy, whether playing football for a living or later on in life. He kept working and managed to keep himself in the style he was accustomed. Anything Tommy put his mind to, he did well. And if he couldn't, he didn't do it. There was no second best for Tommy. He had to be the best. And I think most of the people here would agree he was. Even playing dominoes, Tommy's competitive streak came to the fore. It didn't matter whether you were 10 or 100, Tommy didn't give an inch. Mary has so many wonderful memories of the exciting and not so exciting times with Tommy. He was a man who enjoyed his time alone with her, whether that was on holiday where he could get away from it all and relax. It was when they were both on holiday that they met for the first time. They were married 31 years ago at the Bodwell Bridge Hotel. It was a small wedding, just close family, no fuss. And then the cake arrived, 5 tiers high, a gift from Tunnocks. Tommy was happiest when he was with Mary, content with his life, a real home buddy. He was 2 different people, the public persona that most people know, a performer, a man who gave as much as he got. He never ever refused to speak to fans. Even if his dinner got cold, he'd stop to sign an autograph, discuss the game with them, make them feel special. He was so well known that when him and Mary were having a meal at the Popinjay Hotel years ago, the owner said he knew Tommy, but this was when he was a boy and he'd cycle up the Horsley Brae to pick strawberries. Tommy didn't like that they got under his nails, so was very happy to be promoted to picking cauliflowers, and was told by this man, "You must have been good or you wouldn't have been allowed to progress to the collies." Another example of Tommy being the best. He was a fabulous singer, Not just a good singer, a great singer. The first time Mary heard Tommy sing was at one of the parties her family were famous for. Even then, Tommy was competitive. He had to be first up to sing his party piece, From Russia with Love. And Pauline, Mary's sister, said he was pitch perfect. Tommy loved being with Mary's family, and they loved him. He fitted in perfectly. He took her dad to the football and was loved by them all. Just after Tommy had his varicose veins removed, Mary's aunt and her friend Sadie, both nurses in their day, asked him how his legs were. Without a moment's hesitation, Tommy undid his trousers to show them his scars. Mary was affronted. What did Tommy say when she told him off? They're nurses. Tommy always knew when he was in trouble. He'd say, Mary, I can feel your eyes boring into the back of my head. He played golf, was a member at Dunblane Golf Club, was a member of Bridge of Allen Angling Club. Tommy loved the outdoors, the quiet time he spent fishing. And Mary made up his peace box, much to the envy of the other anglers. He'd come home from a day's fishing, rested and at peace with the world. He told Mary he'd teach her how to do fly fishing, so she got the gear on and went with him. She did her best. Tommy said, it's just a flick of the wrist. Well, Mary flicked and caught Tommy's jacket the first time, and it went from bad to worse, with them both agreeing that this was to be added to the things that you don't teach your wife, to drive or fish. Mary told me when they were skiing in the Alps, Tommy couldn't quite get the hang of it, wasn't sure of how to stop once he'd started, so he took off his skis and said, sod this, walking down the mountain. He did go back and tried again, managing so much better the next time. I'm not sure how many of you will know that Tommy had a favourite film called The Quiet Man. And he played it all the time. Laurie, Harry and Scott remembered when they were younger, staying over with Uncle Tommy and Auntie Mary regularly. They'd get up in the morning, Tommy and the kids wearing the same T-shirts, and Tommy entertained them by playing The Quiet Man to groans of, oh no. It didn't stop them. They all just had to sit through it. Another wee story. Tommy and Mary took the kids out for a pizza in Coatbridge, and lots of people came over to ask Tommy for his autograph. Harry turned round and said, Uncle Tommy, why are you paying everyone's bill? Scott will remember being keen to go with Uncle Tommy to Celtic Park. So he took him, and as they went through the tunnel and out, everyone was excited, apart from Scott. He wanted to know where the swings were. So, how would Tommy like to be remembered? For being a kind, caring person. No one had a bad word to say about him. He was friendly, welcoming, a man who made others feel comfortable in his presence, a real charmer with a great humour and warmth. Tommy loved life. Mary said his greatest achievement was doing what he wanted to do. Tommy was a strong character. He knew his own mind. He was independent. In fact, it could be said they broke the mould after Tommy. Tommy and Mary enjoyed life. They travelled, went to shows, visited London often, as well as all the other places. Tommy had no regrets. He lived life his way, was a showman, and knew he'd get a good send-off, which, of course, he has. If there's only one thing that I can say after hearing about Tommy, it would be this. It's nice to be important, but even more, it's important to be nice. I think that for me sums up Tommy Gemmell. He was a good man. This is a sad day for all of you here, but especially for Mary and the family. So many people remember Tommy fondly, from Hong Kong to Arbroath, all over the world. They've been in touch to offer their condolences. That's a measure of the man and what he meant to each of you. We've now come to perhaps the most difficult part of this ceremony when we say a formal farewell to Tommy. In doing so, I'd ask you to focus on the happy times you spent with him. It would be how Tommy would want you to remember him. So I'm going to ask, if you're able, would you please stand for the committee? In love and respect, we've been remembering Tommy's life and what he meant to each of you. Tommy, we're glad that we got to know you, enjoyed your friendship and your love. Now, in peace and thoughtfulness, we bid you farewell. Your companionship, your warmth and generosity of spirit, your courage, your honesty and determination, we commit to our memories. Your love and affection, we commit to our hearts. Lastly, with sadness but without fear, we commit Tommy's body to its final end. Please take your seats again and use this time to say goodbye to Tommy in a way that fits with your own beliefs. Hold him safe and warm in your hearts, and remember the happy times that you spent with him while we listen to some music. The piece you're about to hear was a particular favourite.
That you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you
I'm aware that there's little I can say today that will bring you much comfort, but I'd also like to remind you, each of you here have a host of great memories of Tommy, a man who loved and laughed and was generous with his time, his talents, and his opinions. And while today it may be that those memories are the ones that are hard to bring to the front of your minds, they'll also be the ones that in years to come will bring a smile of recognition and a warmth to your hearts when you remember Tommy. So keep them close, look after them. You'll need them when time has had a chance to heal the hurt of this sad parting. What a privilege for you to have known Tommy. It's not only the grief and sadness at his loss you're learning to come to terms with just now, it also takes time for us to get used to the changes in our own lives when we lose someone we love. Tommy made his own unique contribution to the world, and of course, it's his uniqueness that you'll miss most of all. The sound of his voice, the touch of his hand, the way he was. Although he's no longer a part of your lives in a physical sense, the connection that you had with Tommy is something that can never be lost. Mary wants to thank everyone who is here today, to the people who have sent flowers, cards and kind thoughts. It's a comfort to know that Tommy was such a special person to each of you as well as to her and the family. And a personal thanks from Mary to her own family, her mum, Mary, sisters, Kathy and Pauline, her brother Thomas and brothers-in-law John and Harry and their families for their support to both her and Tommy. Thanks to her friends, Angela, Nikki and Lynn, and many more, too many to name individually, but you know who you are. As we leave, we'll be listening to a song that is meaningful to many people here today. I'm not sure that I need to introduce it. I think you'll know the words. It's a fitting way to end this celebration of Tommy's life. And some words of advice from Tommy. Life is for living. I think you'll all agree. Tommy lived life to the full. But before we leave, I'm going to hand over to Willie Hawkey, who's a few words to say.
Mary's asked me to say a few words today in thanks and tribute to some of the people who have helped her. I'd like to start with some apologies. Got a lovely telex from Ali McCoy yesterday saying that he's sorry he can't be here, but his prayers and thoughts are with Mary and the family. Also, I got a letter today from the club got a letter today from the president of UEFA, and it just says that please accept my deepest condolences on hearing that former Scotland international and Celtic legend Tommy Gemmell has passed away. On behalf of the members of the international football community, I should be grateful if you could extend our deepest condolences to his family and loved ones. We hope that in some way our words of support may help bring a little bit of peace and solace in this time of sadness. Also received apology from Alan McKay, the president of the SFA, is sorry he can't be here again, passing his condolences to Mary and the family. As I said, Mary's asked me to say a few words, and I've not to go on because Tommy hated funerals that went on too long. She's told me to say that. As you've already heard, over the past 7 years, Tommy's not been in the best of health. The decline over the past 18 months meant that he'd spent quite some time in various hospitals. About 12 weeks ago, Mary was at her wit's end with the uncertainty as to where Tommy would be treated. She was so distraught, she reached out to Celtic. She phoned Peter Lawwell, who immediately said that the club would do everything it could to help. Peter asked me if I knew of any decent nursing homes that could take Tommy. I phoned Matt Sawyers, who owns some of the finest nursing homes in Scotland, and he told me that he would be delighted to help Tommy. He found a place for him at the Three Bridges nursing home, which ironically is right beside Hampden Park, as Alec already said, the scene of so many of Tommy's great triumphs. Tommy spent the last 12 weeks of his wonderful life there. And the reason why Mary has asked me to tell this story, she says that the last 12 weeks of Tommy's life has been the best and most comfortable he's been in the last 7 years. So she wants me to pay a special tribute to Matt, to his son William, and to Darren, and a heartfelt thank you to Tracy, along with all the nursing staff who were unbelievable. They were wonderful and caring. Tommy lapped up every minute of it. He felt special again. And again, a special thank you to Janet and Audrey, who also helped. Big thank you to Tony and everyone at TR O'Brien for their help with the funeral arrangements. But Mary would especially like to thank Celtic Football Club, especially Peter Lawwell, for being there in our hour of need. It's at times like this when you get a sense of what the Celtic family really means. Mary could not have got through these trying times without the unbelievable support of her two special friends, Angela and Nikki, who I got to know really well at spending many, many hours in the morning sitting by Tommy's bed. A special mention also to the Lisbon Lions, Betty Auld and Jim Craig, who visited Tommy on a regular basis, and again to his great friend Alec and Gerda Gordon, who have been good friends for Tommy for many, many years. And a big, big thank you to Kathy and John. And to two of Tommy's long-time friends, Brian and Tommy, very special thank you. Again, to Willie Henderson, who's been a great, great friend of Tommy's for many, many years. Mary would also like to thank the directors of Rangers Football Club who are here today for their support and their attendance. They're very much welcome. Mary tells me what Tommy hated the most about funerals, as you've heard. They went on too long, and they really get sad at the end. So he's asked me to try and lighten up the mood a wee bit as we leave. This could probably get my titles taken off me. People might think that's not a bad thing. Two stories about Tommy, just to finish, and it was mentioned about Jinky earlier. When Tommy was the manager of Dundee and Jimmy was struggling to find a club, Tommy phoned him and says, "How would you like to sign for Dundee, wee man?" He says, "Aye, brilliant, Tom." He said, "Well, you need to come up," he says, "and talk to me about the money." He says, "Right, well, we don't want anybody to see you." He says, "I've got a friend," Tommy said, "who owns a gents' tailor shop in the town centre in Dundee. I'll meet you there." So they met in the storeroom at this tailor shop, which was full of suits and leather coats and what have you. And after about 10 minutes, they'd agreed it'd be 300 quid a week. They shook hands, and as Tommy went to walk out the store, Jimmy said to him, "Big man, what about the signing-on fee?" Tommy, being the entrepreneur that he is, says, "No bother, wee man, pick a coat." One day when Jimmy was really unwell, I asked him to come to Celtic Park, to come for his dinner one day and come to the game, and we invited Tommy along, and it was great. And Jimmy went up and he looked at all the food and he said, "That's great," and there was a couple of lamb chops and some potatoes, some veg. And he went down and he sat down, and Jimmy had started, and Tommy had been talking to people, usually doing autographs, and he asked him to go up. Tommy was up there getting his dinner, and Jimmy shouted across, "Tam, get us another couple of chops." So Tommy had all his food on his plate already, and the chef wasn't there. So Tommy leaned across, picked up 2 of the chops, went to put them on his plate, and the chef said, oh, what are you doing?" Tam turned to wee Jimmy and says, "Wee man, you nearly got me done for choplifting." In my thank yous, I forgot to mention the police outriders. Big thanks to them. But as I was coming in, one of them said to me, "Please remember to tell the congregation that during the songs there's to be no lateral movement." That's a wee political one. Mary would like to invite everyone back to Celtic Park, and again to thank the club for everything that they've done there. And as you've heard already, what Big Tam would always say, it's time for a snifter. R.I.P. legend.